Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United. Joining me this evening is Joshua from YouTube channel Authentic Intent. How are you doing, Joshua?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Nathan?
I'm doing superb. Thank you very much
Terrific.
indeed. I've just pretty much finished watching your trip to the State Fair. What a fantastic video that was. You've already had hassle from it, so maybe you can start by telling us about the grief that you've got from the video that you've published most recently before anything else.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of detractors out there and a lot of people who don't necessarily like what we're out there doing and promoting truth on a public setting. So I've already gotten earlier this morning a privacy violation, and we're just going to have to present Google with my state law about how I'm able to openly speak about truth and video camera people on public property, and we just roll from there. I'm 2 for 2 so far in regards to my privacy strikes, and it's not going to detract. It's not going to stop me. I'm going to keep pushing forward and keep doing what I was meant to do in this community.
When you say 2 for 2, what you mean by that is two people have put in claims that you are violating people's privacy, and on 2 occasions you've beaten it by submitting the local statute or whatever, is it?
Yeah, yeah. One was when I was at Lake Calhoun, and I think another one was for the state capitol building. So people just unfortunately aren't familiar with my law here in Minnesota, and so they think that we live under a particular government where a person can complain and try to be the law themselves, and it just doesn't work out for them very well.
I mean, what is the law that basically that you can film on public property? Is that basically it?
Yeah, the law here in Minnesota is one of 39 states in the country where I can openly film and or record anybody else on public property without their consent. The only person that needs to consent with filming or recording is me.
So why would anybody put in a privacy violation claim in the first place? It just seems like a waste of time.
Well, it is a waste of time when they realize that they're misinformed. And usually they do it so that I can get a community strike against my account, or just to kind of create a record of my channel where he's continually doing something that is illegal. And again, they're just uninformed and they don't understand the law.
Okay, I mean, for people, that aside, we've addressed that now, which is great.
Yeah,
But what were you actually
sure.
doing for those who haven't actually seen what you're doing out on the street, out in the public with the people, the great unwashed? What is it that you're actually doing, and what is your intention?
Well, my intention is to just bring to light some of the, basically just to be blunt, some of the lies that have been put upon the youth and America and the earth in regards to what mainstream media calls conspiracy theories. So whether it be the moon landing, JFK, 9/11, and now with the idea that the earth is a level, motionless plane, I feel it's important to give people an opportunity to hear an alternative viewpoint, particularly with where we live. I think that it changes a person's worldview when they come to the understanding that we may or may not live in a Truman Show type environment, and that there might be an infinite dome, with infinite land and resources, or we could be in a contained environment, much like M. Night Shyamalan's movie The Village. And so there's different narratives that Hollywood does give us through entertainment purposes to give us an idea of where we really live, but because it's brought out in an entertainment type fashion, people don't take it as serious as they should. And so we take a lot of what we hear and see and read from mainstream educational system as truth. And we don't investigate anything on our own time when we get older. We just kind of assume that we'd been there, done that, and got the t-shirt when we were in school. So everything that we were taught as we were growing up is kind of settled. And so when people think that we landed on the moon and I present to them information that they might be using harnesses on a set, it changes their paradigm. And I'm kind of out there to just challenge the narrative. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I do go out there with, like my channel says, with an authentic intent to give people a fighting chance. So almost to plant a seed. And hopefully it challenges what they've grown up. And for some people, they've already, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So they're already old enough to know better, right? And so they just kind of just move on.
I mean, from a few of your videos from a few months back, maybe your earlier videos, certainly in flat earth terms, you were putting across quite a strong Christian rhetoric as well. But in your most recent video, that seemed to have been toned down a little bit. Is that intentional, or is that because of detractors? Or I assume you haven't changed your religious views in any way.
No, not at all. And with that, I tend to allow the person that I'm talking to bring up the whole God aspect and like, what is your real point in doing this? You must be like a Christian or something. And earlier in the video, when I was talking to the 3 kids and the 2 girls on the left, one of the girls said, "So what do you think about homosexuals since you just said you were Christian?" I do not mind having conversations about faith and about God and where we're at. And I know that it might sound dogmatic with me saying that I do believe that Jesus Christ is God. I believe that the Bible is the 100% inspired word of God written through man. But there's a lot of stuff about the Bible that I don't understand, and I don't nitpick and try to make it seem like I have to understand this, or this part of the Bible says something that offends me, so I'm not gonna follow, kind of obey or trust the rest of the book. And I don't know God's mind. I don't know what his purpose is for us and for me, for that matter. But I don't allow that to dissuade me from understanding that God has me put here on earth to bring attention to truth. And I will say a lot of stuff in the future that will cause a lot of people to feel uncomfortable. And that's not my purpose, but sometimes the truth can be a hard pill to swallow. And I do think that for a lot of people who are in the flat earth community, understand that there is a creator. I guess, lean more towards a biblical creator myself.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, your title of your channel sums it up quite nicely. Authentic Intent is a really cracking name because it sums up precisely your intentions when you're putting forward your information. It is authentic, and I like that a lot. I mean, I'll come back to this subject a bit later if that's okay, because you're
sure.
an Infinite Plane Society fan and you're quite active in his chat rooms and certainly some of the things he's done. But if we can come back to that maybe a little bit later and go back to a bit of a flat earthy question, which is something I ask most of my guests, which is, how did you actually find out that the earth is flat?
Oh, well, I actually, a couple months after I returned from Thailand in 2015, when I say that, people are like, "Oh, you must have met Eric Dubay then, right?" And I had no idea who he was at the time. And I got back in August of 2015, and a couple months later, I was just driving in my car, and YouTube was playing in the background, and it went to like a recommended video, and it was Eric Dubay doing his 200 proofs. And kind of like 3 or 4 in, I was like, is this serious? Like, it was provocative. I mean, for sure. I mean, to try to give off ideas that we live on a level, motionless plane is one thing, but then to create a 2-hour long video about it was even more kind of a head scratcher. And so, yeah, I would say like late 2015 is when I started to investigate it more and having my ears open to it. Before that, I was doing a lot of my own personal, quote, research of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So I was already on a conspiratorial tip of really starting to question. I was getting very serious about questioning the motives of people who are in charge, and I feel very grateful that I came across that video. And it could have been anybody's video, but it just so happened to be Eric Dubé's 200 Proofs. And having just been in Thailand, it kind of resonated with me a little bit more. And I understand the people quite a bit because I spent 8 months there. And I left a lot of my heart in Thailand because it was a very special time for me and a big learning process for me too. So from that, I started to just kind of hang out in Google Chats, live streams. I did more and more, research about videos that were out there, and it started to become more and more prevalent to me that we had been lied to. And I had the blue marble on my computer screen as my screensaver for years and years and years.
Me too. Me too.
And having been a Christian, I've been a Christian for 10 years. So I by no means grew up in a Christian family. I wasn't necessarily, brought up in that type of an environment. And so even being a Christian was new to me. But having the blue marble on my screensaver, I thought that at the time that was what God saw. Like, I really thought that. Like, I thought that looking at the blue marble on my 60-inch widescreen 3D TV, when I wasn't using it, I was looking at what God saw. And to find out that that was a fake CGI picture, it really started to turn my dial a little bit. And I started to have righteous indignation towards the establishment.
So, I mean, I noticed again in the most recent video that you did go on in some depth with some of the people about 9/11. Were you looking at these sorts of conspiracies before you came to Flat Earth? I mean, you mentioned about cystic fibrosis, but that's not really conspiracy. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it is.
Yeah, well, yeah, we could definitely get into that. There's some MK Ultra mind control weird stuff going on with that, and how they use the monarch butterfly now with their new vest treatment as their kind of like their mascot. And
They use the what? What do they use as the mascot?
Yeah, they do.
What is
they
it?
have a monarch butterfly on their.
What's the mascot? What's it? What is it exactly?
I'm sorry?
I didn't catch what you said the mascot was.
Oh, it's a monarch butterfly. Yeah. So
I don't know the meaning behind that. Why is that important? I'm completely ignorant, so you'll have to explain.
Oh,
what
sure.
That means.
Yeah, the monarch butterfly is kind of, in a way, a tramp stamp for people who have been under MK Ultra mind control, particularly in the Hollywood business. And so it's kind of like the establishment way of marking their territory, kind of like how you brand a cow to say, like, this cow is part of my flock. So if it gets out of the fencing or something, you just look for that marking. And there was a curious, very interesting investment that the CF Foundation put in to a pharmaceutical company called Vertex, which has a pyramid for their logo, where it has the top all-seeing eye pyramid on the capstone above Vertex, and then you have Vertex in the middle, and then you have the bottom part of the pyramid. And 15 years later, after CF Foundation invested $150 million into that company, they took out the money from that investment, and that money that they took out because of a quote conflict of interest ended up being $3.3 billion. And so I thought that was a curious number also. And as I continued to pursue the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation even more, I found out that instead of CF being a genetic disease, it might actually just be a selenium deficiency. And there have been studies in the early 70s and late 70s regarding CF patients taking selenium. And it actually does show some improvements to health for people who are, quote, diagnosed with a genetic disease called CF.
What is selenium? It's just a base element, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a mineral deficiency, yeah. And so the mother having not a lot of selenium in her system, and then bringing it off onto the child is born with what they would consider a cystic fibrosis genetic disease. And so one of the guys who was doing a study in regards to this, his name is Joel Wallach. He found that there was a similarity between CF patients and selenium. He was working with the CEO of Cystic Fibrosis Foundation at the time in the early 80s, and I was born in 81. He was discharged from working with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation because of his pursuit and willingness to show that CF is just a selenium deficiency. And it seems like the CF Foundation realized that they could make more money, and this is obviously just my opinion, but they've realized they could make more money by calling it a genetic disease and turning it into this, like, quote, cancer foundation, basically. And they got rid of Joel Wallach, and a few years later, he came out with a book called Dead Doctors Don't Tell Tales or Don't Tell Lies. So he got a book deal out of it, and he gets to promote his various, what we call pseudosciences and stuff. But he still says that CF is a selenium deficiency, but it's not taken as seriously as it might if the CF Foundation was to pursue, treatment with selenium. So from that, yeah, I mean, I've done 9/11 stuff quite a bit. I've been into 9/11, truth and understanding, the types of people that were involved. And it seems like there's 3 levels to the conspiracy of 9/11. And I guess I'm kind of at the top tier of what I think happened. And to share that information it can be quite shocking to the system, because nobody here on Earth in general would ever believe that people would be that evil to perpetuate such an atrocity on U.S. soil.
Yeah, the audacity of it is outrageous, and people just can't fathom that could even be in the comprehension of people who govern us. It just seems so outrageous that people have difficulty even comprehending it. But I didn't intend to get into this, but one of the things, again, you mentioned on your recent video was about directed energy weapons, which is a Dr. Judy Wood concept. Why would you put that speculation out to people who are so green? I'm sorry to ask that. I'm really sorry.
No, sure. No, I appreciate you asking. I want to give people all the options. I want to share and put out that into the quote ether. I know that sounds very new agey for a lot of Christians out there, but you got to understand that there are molecules between me and Nathan, or me and the people downstairs, or me and people all over the earth. And that's how I think prayer comes to be such a powerful tool, is with your intent of your heart, which is a vibration. If you are honest and true and with love deliver an intent towards a particular person, that does not return void. And the opposite happens when you speak evil, witchcraft, and seances and stuff like that. So there is a spiritual battle that we're dealing with here on earth. And for me to, with what I believe to be true, to say that out loud and to try to deliver that in a manner that sounds honest, and I'm not trying to, dissuade anybody from going to one particular viewpoint or anything. I believe that it is my role, if you want to go that far, to give people an option to investigate that claim. And so, yeah, and in addition to that, I'll even bring it up. Another level of 9/11 is there may not have been airplanes used during that whole fiasco. So,
I mean, that I can buy easily, though, because, I mean, you've really got it. It's a bit like the moon landings. Once you've seen the magic trick or you understand the magic trick, it seems really obvious. So that you look at the moon landing footage, it looks blatantly filmed on a set. It's just that obvious to me and to you and to most people who are watching this now. And with 9/11, the timelines don't lie in terms of the technology for overlaying live CGI onto the footage that they took of the building's collapse, or prior to the building's collapse. So yeah, you've only got to look at it, and there's been so many people who've diced up, the nose coming in out at the other end of the plane. Before I waffle too much and take over, what was on your DVD that you're handing out to people? Because again, you mentioned that there's specifically 9/11 information on there. So what specifically is on the DVD about that subject? We'll come off 9/11, I promise.
Sure. No. The information on that DVD is a movie called September Clues. And so that movie called September Clues gives people kind of well, actually, so the first video is Loose Change. So I'm sure that most of the people that are into the conspiracy of 9/11 and whatnot have seen that video, Loose Change. And so that is kind of a starting point, for people to just kind of get an idea that there are some head scratchers with 9/11. Pennsylvania wreckage just evaporated. The first newscaster to come to the Pentagon saw that there was no wreckage anywhere on the ground to show that an airplane crashed into the Pentagon. And so various other things to kind of bring people to that idea, just even like a foundation that 9/11 was kind of a quote inside job. And so from that, it leads people into the one of the ultimate conspiracies about 9/11, and is that there's no planes used at all for that. And so that's called September Clues. And then after that, there's a video of a guy kind of doing a presentation about what he thinks that might have been, and he thinks that it might have been some kind of either a missile or some kind of an orb type highly advanced military weapon that was used. And I just, for me, that's just kind of my thing, is just giving people all of the evidence and all of the options so that they can kind of have their own discernment of whether or not they want to believe it, because then at least my conscience is cleared. Like, then I don't have to feel upset for leaving them with bringing this information up to them, but not allowing them to see these things for themselves. And I think that that's important, because at the beginning of Authentic Intent, I was just telling them my YouTube channel, and hoping that they remembered it, and they went home and then they punched it in. They may or may not have remembered it. So as I've progressed, I got, a quote business card, and now I'm handing out DVDs, so that that is really my burden, is to allow them to go home and do their own investigation on their own time.
So MK Ultra, you've mentioned that. Is it something you've looked into extensively?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. And I say unfortunately because what a tangled web we weave when we try to deceive. And there's a lot of stuff out there that my mainstream counterparts would find very, very difficult to even comprehend, that our government would be involved in this type of stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's start simple. I mean, the way I try to put these shows together is such that I imagine somebody watching it that has no idea about Flat Earth, that has no idea about 9/11, that has no idea about conspiracy, and then they'll hear a term like MK Ultra, and you've probably watched things like Sophia Smallstorm and watched her testimony, and anybody, again, I'm talking to the general audience who we probably actually do have when I say things like that. But when I ask you what is MK Ultra, try and put it across to somebody who has never heard that term, has no vague clue what it even means.
Sure. MK Ultra would, for the best kind of Reader's Digest explanation, is at a very, very, very young age, like 3, 4, or 5 years old, creating a split personality and associating particular items or words or environments into that split personality, so that when the person, let's say the next morning, wakes up and they're John Smith, they're John Smith, and they don't remember anything that happened the day before. And so by using, for example, a white bunny rabbit, they would be able to associate that with a particular lifestyle in their mind, and then they would go to John Doe. So they're literally living two different lives. And what, from my understanding, the establishment does with famous people is they tempt them with money, fame, women, men, attention, and so on. And they use that as a means to perpetuate their goal of how they want to use this person. For example, Britney Spears is a possible candidate of this. And so one way that they keep these people kind of in line is through torture, and a lot of sexual abuse goes on, particularly with females in regards to this. And this has a lot to do with like your sex trafficking and your Ted Gundersons and stuff, because they do use young kids and they kind of mold them and they train them into a particular role that they feel fit for them. And when they're done using them, then they kind of just cast them off to the side. And so I guess, yeah. So MK Ultra would be kind of just a disassociative personality of separating yourself from reality.
So if you mention Britney Spears, you say they've done, let's just assume that they have, just for the sake of this discussion. Sure. Why? So from the outside looking in, again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. It seems like, why wouldn't you want to be Britney Spears? Why would you need torture? What would be the purpose of doing it? What's the advantage to the person who's actually perpetrating this evil on someone like Britney Spears?
Yeah. A particular group of girls is gonna, like when I was, you were growing up in the UK, but I'm sure you saw this, Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, right? So you had like the two girls on each side. So some girls growing up in, high school or junior high identified with Britney Spears, whereas other girls grew up identifying with Christina Aguilera. And so that was the same mentality that they had with Madonna and Cher, and just to use them as, kind of like counterparts. So from my, just understanding, in my opinion, people associate themselves with a person because of their character, their songs, how they go about their business, and so on. And so the establishment knows that they have to kind of cover all their bases. And that goes to the rap game too, so they have Tupac and Biggie Smalls, so they own both sides of the narrative. So as much as we might think it's East Coast versus West Coast, they really own both sides. And so it goes along with Republican and Democrat. So as you kind of get into this quote conspiratorial world, you start to understand that they have to control all aspects of the narrative so that then they can control the populace as a whole. And some girls who identify with Britney Spears are going to start to act like her, look like her, kind of want to be her, and they'll may or may not be more promiscuous and have kids out of wedlock, right? Or have a particular lifestyle. And in the rap game, unfortunately, the black culture, some guys will be drawn to drugs and gangs and that gangster lifestyle because of the videos that they see, even though that's not who they really are in their heart, but it's a means for them to kind of associate themselves with a group of people.
So are you saying that the purpose of perpetrating MK Ultra is just to keep control of whoever it is that they have perpetrated this upon?
Yeah. Yep.
So have you got any other examples where it's not like something that's more cutting than like a... I can appreciate that you're saying people will be influenced by Britney Spears, but are there other examples where it's not just pop music, it's something more cutting?
Your politics. There's some provocative videos out there showing that Bill Clinton, when he was campaigning from Arkansas to be president, there is some video showing that he kind of flubbed his lines and wasn't able to focus as easily. And they were kind of training him behind the scenes and trying to get him into a mindset. I hate to break it to a lot of people, but Hollywood is full of hypnotists. Hollywood is used to bring off a particular illusion towards people. And when I was in Southeast Asia, Asian people loved America and Hollywood and kind of that ritzy feel. And I couldn't explain in English, because a lot of them didn't understand English very well. that America is one of the last places I would ever want to come if I was not already born here in America. And so I think the biggest cutting edge sword of how they manipulate our populace is through our political system. And there's a lot of actors out there. I did a video a couple days ago to kind of show that Larry the Cable Guy fakes his accent. And what you see while they were doing their redneck tour, you know, something like 10 or 15 years ago, that's not really him. Like, that's a character. And when you sit down with him and you talk, he sounds like I do. He doesn't have a Southern accent, but he's able to go in and out of that accent on the spot. And he was able to do it with his friends also, to kind of associate with his friends who spoke genuinely in a Southern accent. And a lot of our politicians, they do that also. They are who they need to be in front of the camera, and when the camera spotlight is off of them, they're a completely different person.
I mean, what you're portraying is the image of puppetry. So,
yep.
Who are the puppeteers? If Bill Clinton, somebody who is obviously put across to the masses as in charge, if you're saying he's MK Ultra mind control puppet, who's the hidden hand?
That's a really good question. I wish I was a fly on the wall to find that out. There are a lot of speculations about who those people are, and I really don't know. I mean, you could go so as far as reading in Revelation 2:9, Revelation 3:9, where it talks about the synagogue of Satan and the people who perpetuate themselves as being the chosen people, God's people, the Jews. And you can carry that all the way down from the Rosicrucians, the CFR, the Jesuits, the Catholic Church, your local churches, Freemasons. Everything is very, very well compartmentalized when it gets to the politics side. And I was talking to a couple people who claim to work for NASA for some like 30 years at the end of my state fair video. And they were just so dead on that outer space is real. What they do with NASA is 100% real, that there's no way anybody would fake anything. There's no way that it would get by them, that our video and photographs of outer space are CGI. And so they're either willfully ignorant, like they don't want to investigate that type of stuff, or they really know what's happening and they're just in complete denial about what's going on.
I mean, I shouldn't challenge my guest, but I can't help myself. It's one where
yeah, do it.
Where you see potentially a hidden hand, I see compartmentalization. God, I hope I've said that correctly. But systems. So if you imagine, this is really, really basic, but if you imagine someone like the makeup lady for Bill Clinton, she's trained how to do makeup, and she is essentially dressing the puppet, but she's in no way part of any control over that puppet. But in the same vein, she's part of the system. You know, there's going to be another person that's a voice and speech therapist, or coach rather, that's going to be teaching him how to do that. And again, they're trained, and this extrapolates out into the education system, having made people a certain way to behave in a certain manner. So therefore, you don't necessarily have to have any hidden hand. You might just have systems that have been in place for a very, very long time that control every aspect right up until the point where it does end. I.e., there could very well be a real possibility that we do have true democracy and, you know, the president is actually in charge, but all of his systems around him and all of the lackeys, for want of a better word, are actually pushing various buttons without his knowledge. I mean, this is kind of known anyway. You know, there are senators and all the rest of it that are doing their jobs pretty much autonomously. There's the impression that the president has to give his authority on everything, but which is just total nonsense. You know, the world would grind to a halt. He can't say yes to every single decision that needs to be made. So in my opinion, just my humble opinion, we have a very system-based problem, which is where we come in. If there's no hidden hand and we just have systems, we can replace those quite easily with newer, better systems. And there's no fight. There's no man behind the curtain necessarily that we have to go about, dethroning before we can put a better system in place. We just have to come up with a better system. But that's just my humble opinion. The hidden hand may very well be the case also. It's not for me to say. But yeah, I'm gonna bring the subject back to something that we were talking about earlier, which is, because we have now talked a little bit about your Christian beliefs, and you've quoted a bit of scripture. Now, what appeals to me about Infinite Plane Society is the fact that he's debunking quite a lot of religious beliefs. So there's a bit of a contrast there that doesn't make sense with yourself. So how do you square that circle?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't grow up in a Christian family. So my idea of who God is, our creator, Jesus Christ, whether or not the Bible is a credible book, whether or not the science books that we read are credible. And a lot of people want to say that there are more ancient texts to prove that the Bible is just a copy of a copy, and it's just like kind of the best of stories, if you will. And over just time, life experience, prayer, and everything, it has led me to the understanding that there is one perfect 100% true thing in this reality, and that ended up being the Bible. And whether or not people want to agree with how you pronounce Jesus Christ's name, the intent of the story is to show how he came to earth, lived a perfect life through the law that was given by God of how a person should live, which is completely impossible for us as human beings to live. Like, even a white lie is a lie, and you've already tainted yourself. And so for God to send himself here to live a perfect life, be an example, he wasn't born to be a martyr. He was born to just obey God. And the Pharisees and those people who obeyed what they felt was the law in their own right saw his testimony and his lifestyle and determined that he was the devil, that he was claiming to be something that nobody could ever be, because nobody's ever seen that. And for him to die for us and then be risen from the dead with the Holy Spirit in mind, that is what I feel that I have in me. I have the same spirit in me that rose Jesus Christ from the dead. And anybody who confesses with their mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord will be saved. And it's a process to go through. And I hear a lot of negativity and detractors about who God is, that he's a female, he's an androgynous being, that he was created by another being, and it was just like this perpetual creation of God's. And he is the great I am. So he has always been, in Exodus 3:6 and in John 6:55, I think, there's a comparison between the Old Testament and the New Testament to say that he is the I am, which means he has always been and always will be. And so when I hear people talk about him or God or the Bible in other channels, like Bro Sanchez or IPS, I respect them for being open and speaking their mind about what they have experienced and what they have come to their own personal convictions. In my mind, though, I think that flat earth can be used as a foundation to promote your own spirituality. And a lot of people would say that about me. I got that a lot when I first started on Facebook, before I even did YouTube Live, that I was just using this as a platform to talk about, quote, my God. And that never really crossed my mind, to be honest. I didn't become a flat earther because of what I read in the Bible about the earth being firm and immovable. That just happened by happenstance. I was totally into promoting truth and wanting to know more truth, no matter how hard it was going to hit my heart, regarding vaccines, chemtrails, and GMOs and stuff. I was just like, God, just keep giving me truth. And when I was delivered flat earth, separate from what I read in the Bible, it was like, this is the ultimate deception about where we live, because if we do live in an enclosed type of a system, and what we see in the sky and what the trolls, if you will, try to promote, of trying to prove that what we see in the sky proves a globe Earth, that's just more of a means for what I feel to an extent the controlled narrative of flat Earth to be, where they want people to pick a side now. And I kind of went into this a little bit in one of my, quote vlogs, but I'll give you a Reader's Digest real quick. My viewpoint about flat Earth and, the biblical God and stuff is one thing. And then the other side of it is, there are no atheists on flat Earth. So when somebody becomes a flat earther, they start to realize that we are a created being from a higher power. I really think that that's where the establishment wants us to be eventually, is they're giving us that option to believe in a higher power, because the people who are in power right now, they believe in the Bible. They just think that their hero is Lucifer and not the biblical God. So they do believe in the Bible a lot more than most Christians do, which is really unfortunate. And I think that that might be one of the means that flat Earth was put out there, is because the establishment is, this is my opinion, I kind of humor this idea, but when you're playing a video game and you're kind of tired of playing it on easy or medium mode, you set it on super hard. You put all the sliders for the AI to go up to the highest spot, and you see how challenging that is. And to be honest with you, I think at times that the people who are in charge are tired of putting one over on these sheep. Whereas when, most people in this flat Earth community can see a fake shooting, they can see a hoax, they can see that Harvey might have been a man-made hurricane. And for whatever means that they did that, to know. But we do have information out there to show that HAARP is possible weather manipulation machine, that they have cloud machines that they can create even out in the ocean with this new hurricane that's coming up, Ira, or there's a new hurricane that's supposed to hit landfall coincidentally in New York on September 11th, so I think that they are kind of getting bored with putting one over on the majority of the masses. And I think that they want to get us to a spiritual point where we all believe in some kind of a creator. And that might be a way that they usher in the Antichrist.
Oh, wow. You've got a whole narrative worked out for it. That's pretty mind-blowing. I mean,
sorry to go on, but yeah,
we've got to get into a bit of those things, though, again, for audience members that might come to these videos and have no idea what you're talking about when you mention things like HAARP and how did you term it? Geoengineering, did you say? Was it that term that you used?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So maybe if you can explain what those are. So what's HAARP?
HAARP is an antennae that I think is in 5 to 7 parts of the Earth. There's one particularly in Alaska right now that is used to energize the sky, along with possible chemtrails and cloud machines to manipulate the weather. And they are able to use this technology that may or may not have come from Tesla to kind of quote predict where storms will be. And they can make them as strong or even dissipate storms where they want to have dry spells, for example, in California. A year ago or so, California went through a massive drought and didn't have any rain. And so it's HAARP, HAARP. And just have an open mind and check out the possibilities of how they do weather modifications and stuff.
I mean, the other thing you mentioned was about Harvey being man-made, so presumably you're going to extrapolate out the effects of HAARP in terms of what it can do to creating this hurricane, which is a huge travesty.
Yeah. Yeah, and people are the victims of this. And that's the thing is, in my opinion, I think that probably only 10 to 15% of the stuff that we see, like here, I'm in Minnesota, I'm in the Midwest. And I was talking to my landlady a couple of days ago when Harvey was kind of at ground zero, if you will. And I said, what do you think it would have to happen here in the Midwest for a Harvey type scenario? I mean, a massive blizzard. We're past tornado season, really, already. And so there's not really anything here in the Midwest that I could think of other than just a massive snowstorm that would cause such devastation. We would have to literally close down the city. And in Minnesota, for example, I mean, we would have to have a severe snowstorm. I mean, 2 inches of snow in 1 inch of snow in Texas would shut the entire state down. I mean, we would have to literally have like 2 feet of snow in a 24-hour period to shut down Minnesota because we're die hard here. And yeah, that's the thing that sucks about these hurricanes, even all the way back to Katrina. It is rumored that Katrina was a man-made hurricane that was used to kind of get a training exercise, if you will, for the various governmental emergency systems to just get an idea of how to put people into particular spots of the city. And they all threw everybody in the Superdome at the time. And the living situation there was very bad. I wasn't down there, but I heard, some stories that it was just like a little village in there, and people were having crime, and people were getting raped and getting stuff stolen from them, even just in the Superdome. And so I think the other side of the coin with the weather manipulation and to use it as a means to get people into a particular area, maybe to kind of just get a better understanding of how to control. It's all about control. I mean, these people can print money. You can go type in Alan Greenspan print money on YouTube, and you can hear him say, there is no financial crisis that this country cannot avoid because we can just print more money. So they can print all the money that they need, and they have the power to do whatever they want. It is really just like I said to these kids yesterday at the state fair. They want to control your mind. And as they continue to move and progress with more and more of their arrogance of being able to control the weather, I think that people need to take what's coming up on September 11th very seriously. I don't believe for 1 second, and I did at the past before I became a Christian, but that's December 25th is Jesus Christ's birthday. That is a good opportunity to share the gospel, in my opinion, to people who are not very familiar with who God is and Jesus Christ and what God did for us as our creator. But I don't believe that that's his birthday. So I would just, and that's when I became a Christian, or is around that time. I got a Bible tract in the mail. Nobody witnessed to me. Nobody shared Christ with me. I just read it on a piece of paper, and I made that decision. But September 11th is a great opportunity to share truth with people. It's a good kind of anniversary point to say, hey, did you know that this anniversary that we're doing, they never found weapons of mass destruction? 3 years later, in 2004, George Bush did a dinner party, basically, and him and everybody inside that little dinner party laughed after he said, hey, where are those weapons of mass destruction? Are they under here? Nope, none over there. And they're all laughing about this because that was the reason that we went there, right? Is to take care of terrorism. And yeah, and then to progress, and find out more truth about 9/11. But I really think that this opportunity when 9/11 is coming up, and then having this new hurricane that's supposed to hit New York on 9/11, to think that that's a coincidence, and to be a sheep out there and think, oh my God, a hurricane's coming on 9/11, like that has nothing to do with anything. It's just a coincidence. And I'm not a coincidence theorist, really. So,
I mean, the other thing that I've got to keep track of this correctly, you kind of alluded that we were being led down the road of flat Earth. I mean, in my mind, I see flat Earth, or just the discovery of the Earth being flat, as an inevitability. It is flat, and it's only a matter of time. Therefore, everything that the systems, as I put it earlier, are set up to do are to just perpetrate that deception. In other words, there might be some psychopath at some stage that just feels like having a laugh and letting out information. People are people. But I think ultimately the systems are very specifically and tightly controlled and designed to deceive us. In other words, things like the moon landing, they're not making it crappy so that we can figure it out. They absolutely wanted to convince us, hook, line and sinker, that they went to the moon. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around it when you say we've been led into this information and somebody's let it out. So maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit and give me a bit of clarity, or the audience a bit of clarity maybe.
Yeah. You know, when you're growing up in high school, you have the counselor will bring you into a room and you have a conversation with them, and they say, "What do you plan on doing when you grow up?" And like what's your 5 or 10-year plan? You know, I mean, did you ever have that conversation? Did they do that in the UK? Kind of have like a counselor talk to you when you were in high school or college and have you planned for, 5 or 10 years in the future?
Well, we had a careers advice meeting which lasted about 10 minutes, and they basically established whether or not you were going to get a job when you finished. That was pretty much it. They certainly didn't, not to my recollection, say, do you have a 10-year plan in place? Not that I can remember.
and yeah, and for a lot of people, especially a lot of in the Black community, there's a lot of young Black men that don't even think that they're going to live past 25. So but with that being said, some people do have a 5 or 10-year plan, and they have an idea. Okay, I'm going to go to school for 2 years, and then I hope to be doing this. I hate to break it to you, but the establishment, they are planners. They have a 50 to 100-year plan, and that's a minimum. Some of these families have a 500-year plan. And so when they kind of flip the script on us, when everybody at the time, 500 years ago, believed that the earth was flat, and then they flipped it on us to believe that the earth is a ball, that was a plan, and it is manifesting itself out as we speak. And so these people are planners, and I have a video about it in my playlist. The playlist is labeled The Establishment, and it's Lord Jamar talking about, you're not a planner if you have a 15-year plan of what you plan on doing when you're in your early 30s and you're in college right now. And these people have a plan. And so, yeah, there's going to be some kinks in the road. They might have to go to plan C or D, but overall, generally, they have a plan of how they want things to kind of work out. And for us to think that a 50 to 100-year plan is like audacious thought, then you're not a planner like they are.
Who are you talking, though? Are you talking Carnegie's and Rockefellers? Are these the they that you're referring to? The elites?
Yeah, your Rothschilds and the CFR, like your organizations then too, because then they funnel in their money into places like the CFR, the UN, the Fed Reserve, and so on. Yeah.
Okay. And what you're essentially saying, I'm extrapolating out what you've said, that they would plan to let us know about the deception, or is the flat Earth idea wrapped up in a parcel with an azimuthal equidistant map, the way that the detractors say that flat Earth is, i.e. it's a dogmatic belief with a specific model, and is that what you're saying they're rolling out?
Yeah, that is options. Again, it goes back to your Britney Spears and your Christina Aguileras, your Justin Biebers and your Justin Timberlakes, for example. Kids are going to identify with a particular person. Flat Earthers are going to identify with a particular model. Infinite plane, infinite dome, snow globe encasing, pizza model where the crust is the ice, ice wall, and we're just all stuck here, and we're in a nutshell.
God's
footstool. And if you climb over that 200-foot wall, then there's more lands, like Admiral Byrd says. So, yeah, there's a lot of narratives out there with flat Earth, and I don't want to say I've read them all, but I am fairly privy to the more, quote, mainstream ideas of flat Earth. And as I've become more, quote, wise in how I deliver the idea of flat Earth. I try to kind of step back from the, saying this is the for sure model. I would, with that being said, I would say that there is more of an idea that we live more of in an enclosed system where the dome and land are infinite and they just keep us in. I mean, not very many people who are civilians can afford the $30,000 to fly to Antarctica. There's just not a lot of, Joe Smiths that are going to be able to do that. And so
but
you are taking a lot of what you read on the internet. So
you're under the illusion that you need to go to Antarctica to discover something. Whereas in my mind, the whole deception is about the land. It's all about the maps and where things are. So if you have any narrative at all that's allowed into our spheres of influence, then you would want it to be one that's a deceptive narrative. So to me, the ring of ice around us that's sort of trapping us in this area is a nice... It's akin to the globe, in my view.
Yeah.
So to have that in people's cognition is useful. It means that you can keep people nicely contained within a certain area. But it's not to say that if we go in that direction, as opposed to, although the ice ring is supposed to be everywhere, but they've got the whole, they've got that area locked down. There's certain points that you can't go beyond, and it's hard to know, like you say, without having the cash to actually go. But even if we did, we're in a deception about land. What map would you possibly take with you to figure out which direction to go to find more of it? Whoever they are, may well know that there's more, but I don't think so. I think they have the same source information we do. But, it's hard to know. We can only speculate. So, I don't know. It's hard to know without being on that path that I've already been on. So you have started it a lot later than I have, from the sounds of things, if 200 Proofs was your sort of opening gambit into Flat Earth. Because for me, it was useful to have a narrative from someone like Mark Sargent, explaining how the azimuthal equidistant map worked, so that you could wrap your head around the concept of it being completely different to how you visualize the Earth being, i.e. a sphere. That is was part of very much cemented in my cognition about how the world works, what the sun is doing, the Earth is moving, the sun isn't. All of those sorts of things were cemented in my mind. So to have a model like an AE map with a ring of ice around it and the sun and moon going overhead, seeing that means you've got a nice visual representation. But 2 years on, I'd be like, scared almost to put that across to somebody, because I kind of know in the back of my mind I'd be filling their heads with nonsense if I was to put that across. Yes, it's a useful tool to help them visualize, a flat plane versus a spherical, it's hard to even describe what the globe is now. It seems so ridiculous, but to have a map wrapped around a ball, that notion was or is how most people see things. So it's useful to conceptualize it as a pizza or whatever. But beyond that, I do genuinely feel that it's complete nonsense. That is a government-controlled, elite-created map. So why would it have any truth in it in a deception about land? And they've gone to the extent of wrapping that map around a ball. Why would the original be anything authentic, or any of the others for that matter? So I don't know. It's a double-edged sword using those models to put across to somebody the concept, when, at least in my view, I think they're nonsense. You can't really. I can't sell it. I can't sell the AE map model anymore.
And how about selling the Pac-Man model to a woman in white gloves? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to pour too much scorn on the Pac-Man model believers. I mean, the Sun and Moon group are doing really well at the moment, and I just fundamentally disagree with a lot of what they say about the model having tracked the sun. I mean, this spans into a different argument I had recently with Curved Water, because there's an aspect of the sun tracking that's yet to be debunked, and I haven't made a massive song or dance about it until recently, because I was challenged on it. sort of asked how did the sun and moon, how did the sun tracking actually, what did it do? What use was it? I said, well, it conclusively debunked the heliocentric model based on two people being at opposite positions on the globe, and it simply didn't work on a globe. You had Robin Poe holding up this globe and saying, here's the one person, and she holds up the globe and the person's on the back side of it, and here's the other person, and they've both got eyeballs on the sun. Now, what we were doing was extrapolating out what the heliocentric model says should happen, and it simply wasn't possible. Now, to date, nobody, Curvewater included, has gone along and said, well, no, you're misrepresenting what's actually happened, or you've used CGI to present the sun, or whatever. Nobody's come along and debunked that. But that sun and moon tracking, the sun tracking was very useful to actually prove to me what I kind of already had observed anyway. The sun does go around us. And one chap, Gir, showed it. Constantly tuned in to the sun tracking event and showed the 24-hour sun in the north. And we got to see it live on air with our own eyes. And I can't put hand on heart and say I've seen it with my own eyes, but I've been very far north to almost see it, within maybe 2 or 3 hours. It goes down and then you see it come back up again. But it's to me nonsense to deny that we have a circling sun. That's just the beginning. Circumnavigation is the same. You can circumnavigate. That's a fact. Again, it's used in both flat and globe models. We'll bring it back to you. Sorry, my little waffle. Your recent video, that was one thing that people, the little black girl that you spoke to said exactly that. We can travel around because it's a globe. The idea of circumnavigation is very much used to demonstrate how it's a globe, but in reality, again, it's useful to have something like an azimuthal equidistant projection to demonstrate this. You can circumnavigate on a flat plane, and it's fairly simple, straightforward stuff. But you've got to deny that if you have the sun travelling out of one side of the map and coming in the other. The Gleason's projection does not. It doesn't work. It's just a nonsense to me. I mean, I'm quite happy to have these strong views, and I have aired them. And as a consequence, I've been, banned from the Sun and Moon Group's chat, which is fine.
Sure.
I'm not going to change my views or feel any less strongly about the nonsense that I feel they're punting, which is how I view it. It's not to say that, again, they have fantastic information that should be put across, but I discussed this more than a year ago with Lawrence Wright. And the reason I had a chat with him was because in my mind, I thought I just didn't understand it. I thought, I don't get this. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. Maybe if I get a better explanation from Lawrence, and at the time he was using a projection called I can't remember, it was a NASA projection, a diamond-shaped one. The name will come to me. Maybe Martin Liedtke, who's in our chat, will remind me the name of the diamond map that NASA use. But he explained it. And after his explanation, and the same is true for Sun and Moon, they did exactly the same thing with me and Martin. They explained it in detail, and I do understand it. That was the problem. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you don't need to give me more details for me to wrap my head around something that I do genuinely understand. I get it. I get how it works, but I just don't think it works that way based on the evidence of my own eyes, the evidence of the sun tracking, the fact that we can circumnavigate. The list goes on and on and on. And I'm not going to actively go out and protest these people. More power to them. I think Jaron summed it up quite nicely. He's never going to try and stop people from investigating any route. He's got different issues with Lawrence Wright because they're actively calling him a shill and a disinformation agent, which is far more outrageous. Live and let live. If you want to investigate the sun travelling through portals, wonderful. Come with some excellent examples and some great proof, and you might convince me also. Same applies to the globe. Doubtful, but, I'm still open to the idea if it was absolutely conclusive. If you had proof that was definitive, you'd be a fool to ignore it. At the moment, it's far from that, especially with square maps with suns going out of one side, travelling in a straight line, coming in the other. That's portals, no matter which way you dice it, and I just don't think it's the case. So that's my little rant over. I'm really sorry to the Sun and Moon Group and to Lawrence and to anybody else who believes in those models. For me, no, absolutely not. more importantly, what do you think about the square models and the portals and the non-circumnavigation? What do you think?
I can't wrap my head around it, to be honest. It's not something that I've been able to. I understand the I well, I say that I see that there is another narrative out there to be presented. I don't buy into it 100%. And again, this is a very, very big topic. Like, as we continue to get more and more new people into this topic, and these channels like Sun and Moon Group, or people who have the AE map in mind, the pizza model, however you want to describe it, it is a narrative that I think the establishment is allowing to be out there because they want to muddy the waters, and they don't want us to have a 100% fixated model that we can show new people. And it just, it doesn't make any sense to me as I continue to look at this, interdimensional sun, even to go so as far as to saying that we have two suns. I don't agree with that either. It doesn't say anywhere in Genesis 1 that there are two suns. It says a greater light was made for the day and a lesser light was made for the night. It doesn't say lights. And the only lights that are plural are what we see in the sky at night, and those are the stars. So, yeah, I get it. Yeah, and again, I play politics. I get along with what I feel like with everybody there. They can express their views about what they think that the Earth is, but to go so as far as to say that you're entering the Bermuda Triangle if you continue to go to a certain way, and you just end up being at the same, you just kind of teleport, if you will. I just don't, I can't fall in line with that. I'm sorry. And that's just how I feel. My inner instinct, just hearing it for the first time and then looking at it and watching it for like a couple of days, it just didn't make me feel very comfortable that what was being said was anything that people should spend their time with, unless it's being used as a controlled narrative.
I mean, I don't know about a controlled narrative. I think by virtue of the systems that are in place, the fact that we have thank you very much, Martin, sinusoidal map from NASA, or used by NASA, just means that we have had that controlled narrative, controlled structure by virtue of the map itself put in place. Therefore, you will have people analyse it, use it, study it, believe in it. And that's going to happen as a direct consequence of it being in existence. It doesn't necessarily need any hidden hand saying, this is the map that's real, honest, nudge, nudge. It doesn't need that. It just needs to be there, and people will look at it. So, I don't know. I'm reluctant to say anything is pushed as a controlled narrative intentionally by anybody. We all have the capability of being wrong. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure there has been times where there must be one where I've been wrong. I mean, there must be. But, I'm just kidding. There's plenty of times where I've been wrong and put out incorrect information. When you do this, you just have to accept it. You don't have to have so much pride as to say, no, defend it, double down on your bullshit. Just accept it.
Right.
Just say, I'm wrong, I was mistaken. It's easy enough to do. And we all make mistakes. It's just having the tenacity to actually admit to that. So, yeah. Flat Earth activism. We're going to get well into this conversation without even covering this subject, because you've got various different things that you've put out there. And again, maybe influenced by Infinite Plane Society, maybe not. We'll find out in a second. But yeah, the billboard. Tell us about that.
Well, I took about a month before I really decided to put something together to suggest people finance a billboard. So it wasn't anything that was, a knee-jerk reaction of seeing what happened, in Philadelphia or anywhere else, or Colorado or anything. It took a while for me to really feel comfortable with doing it. And when I finally did, it was funded a week before it went live, actually. And so with the donations that I got in an abrupt fashion, instead of putting it near the Minneapolis International Airport and by the Mall of America, which was my first initial plan, because I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it's going to take like 3 months to fund this thing, So we'll just put it up at just general place. And when I was talking to Clear Channel Outdoor, I said, hey, let's talk in October and see. I mean, that's literally what I said. I said, I want to set this up. I just want to get a quote from you and everything and find out the various billboards that are available down by the international airport, and let's see what happens. And I said, let's chat in October. And when I was able to get 95% of the funding after just a few weeks of the billboard promotion going live, I said, hey, wait a second, let's see if I can put this up near the state fair, because it's only going to be able to be up in a week anyways. That's kind of the general rule with a lot of the digital billboards here in Minneapolis. So let's put it up during the highest traffic possible throughout the entire year in the Minnesota State Fair. 2 million people will be going to the Minnesota State Fair. And as you could probably see behind me, I mean, it's a really nice day on a Saturday. So guess where your majority of Minnesotans are right now? And so they're driving right by it, and they're getting an idea of where we might live, and just to really challenge. That's where I'm at. I mean, a lot of people say, why do you say might when you know that it's a for sure flat, motionless plane? And I say, but they don't know that. And so if I say might or could be to somebody whose mind has never thought that we live on a level, motionless plane, it's really just challenging them to that point of saying, maybe I could look into it, and it is going to make them feel uncomfortable, but I'm giving them an option. So
just before we get off track, what will they actually see? So you've got your Minnesotans that are on their way to see Usher. What do they see on their way?
Yeah, they are going to see, I'll show. Do you have a way to share it on your end?
Yeah, if you just go to screen share, it'll pop up as long as you're talking.
Yeah.
This is the flat Earth sign. So there's been a couple of these. One of them, as described, has been funded. It's just presumably a GoFundMe, was it not?
Yep. Yeah, it was. And
these flash up on these digital signs. So as you're driving by, you essentially get to see a ginormous, enormous flat Earth wake up sign, which we'll hopefully have on screen in just a second.
There you go. Can you see that?
Yeah, looking good. You have to speak again just to bring it over to you. Can you just say something just so it brings it over to you?
Yep. All right. So this is it right here. Welcome to the Minnesota Flat Fair. 71% of the earth is water. Water is always flat and level. Hashtag flat earth. YouTube authentic intent, and the YouTube channel to bring them to my channel is down below. So I actually caught a little bit of flack from local flat earthers, not local, but, in the community, saying that why did you put your, channel information on the billboard? Is it all about you? You have this monstrous ego. And actually, by rule in Minnesota, you have to direct people to know who is funding this billboard. And so I'd love to hear the conversation that those flat earthers had when ODD put his billboard up and put his information up there. I wonder if they said the same thing to him. So, but yeah, so that's it. And that has been up since last Monday at midnight. And then tomorrow at midnight is its last day.
Absolutely awesome. So, have you got stuff that we're going to start rounding out this show. So maybe if you can tell us about things that you've got coming up in terms of future activism that you've got planned, and then plug your channel, and I'll thank you for being on.
Yeah. Sometime this week, I'm going to do something very controversial and head out to my local Fed Reserve Bank in downtown Minneapolis and, kind of just put out a demonstration. I'm going to go there during a weekday, during work week time, and all of the activism that has gone on the last couple of weekends, particularly in, you know, California. They do all their activism on the weekends when they don't have to work or whatever. And so, yeah, so I plan on going downtown Minneapolis to do that. And I am very much in the process of trying to understand how to bring flat Earth to Congress, or at least in my local committee meetings, and present the idea that this needs to be taught in schools as an alternative teaching for kids as they grow up. So I know that there's a couple of people out there that love to hear that, both positively and negatively, that think that it shouldn't be taught to any children at all. And you're part of the problem then. And you want to keep us at this constant Santa Claus is real, the Easter Bunny is real type of deal. And I'm not about that. I am very much in this community to bring change to the overall level of how we are raised and our worldview. And it's very important to me to bring kids up in a reality of truth. And I think that it will help push more and more lies being exposed. The moon landing. I mean, there are so many people who can't even trust the moon landing. And so we just need to just put the kibosh on everything. If the Earth was really a sphere, flat Earth wouldn't even be a conversation right now. Like, it just wouldn't be. And so for there even to be a shadow of a doubt that we live on a level, motionless, firm plane, that's a problem to me. And I want people to contact me through my email address, or through Skype or whatever, so that we can start moving forward with putting this out there, and stop like with the 8-hour hangouts. The songs that you play when you've upped somebody and you tell them to leave. The prideful boasting of flat earthers trying to put one over on a Globie, if you will. I'm getting tired of hearing that. And it's been over 2 years. And I'm kind of bored with the drama and that narrative of people feeling like this flat earth thing is a means for them to benefit, whether it be their own ego or attention or whatever. That was never my intention. My intent with openly speaking about flat earth and other controversial subjects is to make a change for those who are growing up in this country and on this earth.
Stuff. Hopefully it won't turn into a scene from They Live when you go to the bank. That's the most important thing. Don't turn up with your glasses and a shotgun. Right, on that note, I'm going to say a massive thank you. Did you want to just plug your email address one more time, give your channel name and any other contact info before we round out the show?
Yeah, so I am Authentic Intent. My real name is Joshua Swift. On my channel, you can see that I'm not Pinocchio. I am a real boy. And so you can look at all my history of the various things that I've put up in the past and see that I'm a real person. My email address is jswifty1981@gmail.com. So contact me if you are serious about putting something together, like what Flat Earth Asshole was doing over this last summer and doing the meetups. Yeah, that's great to get people together and have a beer and talk about your camaraderie with Flat Earth. But I would like to use those opportunities to write stuff down. Like, okay, this is a serious proof that we can present to our elected officials and start moving this ball forward, right? And pun intended, and getting that presented and take this more seriously as we move forward, everybody. So I thank it so much for Nathan Oakley contacting me, and I really appreciate his ability to listen and have a platform for us flat earthers to discuss things, even though we might not agree on everything. And thanks for being a part of this community, Nathan. Really.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Joshua, so thank you very much for being here. And with that, I'll say a huge thank you also to all of the live chat who have joined us. It's been a pleasure having you here too. Make sure to like, comment, share and subscribe. I've been Nathan Oakley. I will see you all in the next video.